Health Committee has resumed. The Health Committee is considering the Sentencing Offender Levy Amendment Bill. We're on part 1. Jacinda Ardern has just under 3 minutes if she requires it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take the remainder of my time. And I'd like to firstly go back before the dinner break. We were discussing the ratio, I guess the split in cost between how much would actually be collected and returned to presumably victim support administering the scheme, and how much would go into admin fees. And I just wanted to clarify some of the figures I was talking about before the break. Originally, I know it was thought that perhaps the scheme could collect up to $5 million a year for victims, but then we had that was scaled back to a prediction of about 13.6 over the first 4 years. And then you, of course, need to subtract, I think, what was estimated $1.3 million to cost to set up the levy and an estimated $1.5 million per year in order to run it. And that was the point at which I was generously talking in rough terms about a halving of the amount that was collected and then the amount that would flow on through. That was something I just wanted to clarify for the benefit of members on the other side of the House. I also wanted to touch on, because in part 1, I've already talked about the order of priority between reparations, levy and fines. I did want to touch briefly on the question of the amount of the levy, because, of course, externally it may seem that the choice of $50, the blanket choice of $50 as a levy, might seem quite an arbitrary figure. And I'd be interested to hear the Minister's explanation as to why $50 was chosen as the amount that we would apply across the board. I wonder whether or not, it was thought that at $100 then you would have to then switch to adding in the disclaimer of ability to pay, or whether or not that would considerably reduce the number of people who would pay. I'm interested in the explanation behind that. And I'm also interested as to whether or not, if we had treated the levy in the same way that we treated fines and reparations, if we factored in the ability to pay, A, would we be able to have considerably increased perhaps the amount that the levy could be, and B, could we have also significantly reduced collection costs? Because of course you'd carve out some of the costs there if you're already taking into account whether or not you're going to spend half your time chasing a person around the country and potentially arresting them and locking them up for not paying their levy. And perhaps we may have found ourselves in a situation where we wouldn't be talking about such a considerable chunk being taken out for administration costs. Perhaps we could have talked about putting significantly more than $50, something more meaningful, into a pot of money set aside specifically for victims. Perhaps we wouldn't be unnecessarily, in this case, raising expectations from victims about what they might receive.
Chester Borrows.
The Chair, and it's good to